Hi there, you're listening to Unnatural Selection, the show about newsy type stuff and things. My name is George.
My name is Tom.
And my name is Adam.
And with our powers combined, we are and always have been 100% of Unnatural Selection's full power. Make sure you visit us at our salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com. I kind of fucked that up.
It's fine. It's pretty important to note as well that we are the original Unnatural Selection podcast. There are other podcasts out there now called Unnatural Selection, and
other Unnatural Selections are available.
I want to start suing for copyright infringement to a certain extent.
The thing is, we don't have a copyright or any kind of IP.
No,
we don't have a trademark on it, I don't think.
We don't have a trademark, but we do have copyright, potentially. Copyright is intrinsic.
We maybe have copyright on the content.
On the content.
Like, so if they started doing a podcast and saying the exact words that were coming out of our mouths.
Yeah, if they were reading our scripts.
If they were like just really good actors reciting previous episodes indistinguishable from us.
True.
But
we could retire.
But also, it also implies that we have a script.
Yeah, this is all scripted. You haven't been reading the scripts? Word for word?
It's all been scripted. This has been one long bit.
Yeah, a 16-year-long bit. Well, it does explain why Adam goes off-piste so often. So
he keeps us on our toes. He went to like the Chicago Improv School of thought.
Like, what's the next beat? What's the next beat? Let's go.
Yeah,
yes,
you
and
play with levels and status.
Yes, and let's bomb the Strait of Hormuz. So again. This is a news and politics show. We're in hell. This is hell. Hell is just. Hell is the original quote is hell is other people, but I'm convinced now that the quote should be hell is Donald Trump. Donald Trump has struck Iran after an attack on a cargo ship. You might be saying, George, didn't we talk about this last week and the week before and the week before that?
Where do you get your news? Like, are you reading like news articles from like months ago?
No. I feel like he just picks up the same article and runs it through.
It can be more or less the same article. It's an evergreen statement. Donald Trump capriciously bombs Iran after an attack in the Strait of Hormuz. So no, this is in fact from 14 hours ago as of time of recording. And the US military has conducted strikes on Iranian targets after President Donald Trump accused Iran of foolish violation of its truce following an attack on a cargo ship in the Strait of Hormuz.
Which they admitted to as well, by the way. But they said
who's they?
Iran.
Iran admitted. Iran actually did do the thing that they are saying is a violation.
But they were like, well, it's going in the wrong part of the waterway, apparently, and that was their
which does kind of violate the whole freedom of navigation thing. If you're saying the 60-day MOU says ships can freely transit the Strait of Hormuz without toll or interdiction, to then bomb one of those ships with a drone because it went the wrong way is probably a violation of that. So the US, as confirmed by CENTCOM, took out some military batteries and drone sort of sites along the coast there.
But don't worry, they've definitely got a memorandum of understanding to eventually have a peace deal.
But what is being understood
may or may not resolve.
What is being understood in the memorandum of understanding is yet to be fully understood. So
that's true.
So it does seem as though that there could be complications with this not peace deal. Again, I feel like this is just hell. We could just pull up this article again every day, every week for the next, several months, and it'll still be relevant because this is what happens when you have idiots running the world, is that they're, capricious and myopic and prone to violence. And so when you've got religious extremists on both sides doing whatever they want, this is what you get. So it's hardly...
Chaos is a ladder.
Hardly surprising, yes. In the words of the little finger, chaos is a ladder. But for whom and to what end is still unclear.
It makes me think... I saw an article in the... I think it was in the ABC, because I believe it was by Laura Tingle, just where the headline was, why hasn't the world economy completely collapsed yet? And I was like,
man, petrol, I saw yesterday, was under $1.50 at a petrol station I was driving past. And I was like, what the
Well,
fuck. I mean,
locally, our supply is good because the Australian government has more or less bribed and coerced and cajoled everyone to send us more petrol.
yeah.
But
That and the fuel excise is still reduced. I believe,
They
at this
extended
stage.
it for another month, but I think
Yeah.
the excise reduction wasn't as much. Like they
Right.
weren't keeping
Yeah,
the
okay.
same value. Yeah, they weren't like discounting it by the same value. Maybe I think still less than what it was
Smaller
pre.
discount.
Yeah,
okay.
smaller discount and only for one more month. I don't know, something like that.
Yeah, so there were fears that because it was due to run out on the 30th of June, that would cause a bit of consternation in the
Oh,
economy if people
no.
saw their
They
petrol
pushed it
prices
into
jumping
the next
up.
financial year. No.
Yeah,
No.
and the thing is, like, they discussed a similar move actually in America, but it was dismissed as being short-sighted, and I wonder to the extent that commentary is probably correct, because it means that the
All of a
Australian
sudden,
government
the
is
prices
for
don't go up overnight.
this is the thing, is that tapering off a tax concession like that needs to be done thoughtfully, because if you go to bed on 30 June and petrol is $1.50, and then you wake up 1st of July, new financial year, who dis, and all of a sudden it's $2, people are going to freak out, right? So it's obviously something you want to avoid, and beyond that, it places enormous pressure on the Australian budget to forego all of this revenue. This is not
Yeah.
something that was necessarily budgeted for and in the forecasting. So it's a good temporary measure. It looks good. It makes people feel good. But to what extent is it sustainable for the long term if and when this conflict continues is not immediately obvious. So I think the Australian government has gone for the sort of easy win on that, but it's gonna cost them. It's gonna cost the budget, and there's, as we've said on the show previously, doesn't seem like there's any real resolution to this conflict in sight, as evidenced by the bombing 14 hours ago. So it kind of leaves us and global markets and everyone else a little bit unsure as to what's going to happen going forward. And the longer it goes on, the more tax revenue we're foregoing. It's not a great situation to be in. And to your point, Tom, there's been lots of commentary on Bloomberg, and again recently, about how, I think one of the recent headlines I saw was like, why isn't oil at $200 a barrel? Because given the amount of shortage that's occurring, and given what we know about the markets and their requirements and their needs for this oil, you would expect that, given that it's such an inelastic demand for this commodity, and the supply of it has been consistently constrained, and even if the whole thing was reduced, sort of fixed up, and tomorrow, we're still going to be looking at a lead time of several months, maybe years, before oil production in the region goes back to what it was before. It's a supply shock, and supply shocks take a long way to work their way through the system, and yet we're not seeing oil at $200 a barrel. And there's really not a good explanation as to why. I think it's something that we've talked about previously. It's like maybe the markets are just pricing in that, Trump's going to chicken out, right? The whole taco thing, and things are going to go back to normal any moment now, 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 things are going to go back to more normal any moment now, 9 months later. It's just like, I don't know, the relentless optimism of the markets is surprising to me.
You're assuming, we've talked about it before, that there's any basis in reality to the way trading is working at the moment.
It's not. It's as untethered from reality as I've ever seen it.
Like, at least with the ones that I have that sort of track the indexes to a few different things, like, they're actually not too bad at the moment. They're back to sort of where they were prior to the crisis happening. So, like, I don't... Yeah. The market, using the markets as a measure in this day and age, it seems to be more... I mean, people keep referencing it, but it seems to be untethered from reality as any sort of measure of anything, to be honest.
I mean, we're still looking at close to 5-year highs on the S&P 500, for example. Like, I think the peak,
exactly.
the previous peak was 7,600 for the S&P, and we're currently sitting at 7,350. So, it's
further.
Everyone's trying to sort of extrapolate where they think things are going to go, but because of the sort of radical uncertainty, nobody knows really what's going to happen, and so everyone's just kind of acting like everything's normal and things will just resolve because they always do.
It's fine. Everything's fine. Don't worry about it. I mean, the other aspect is that with this memorandum of understanding, effectively sanctions have been or are being lifted or will be fully lifted
left
to
and
some
right
extent
on Iran.
from Iran. So in some ways, the extra supply that they deliver may also compensate. But
so you've got a whole a reconstruction package, which is promised as part of this deal, something like $300 billion. So the American government spends a couple $100 billion bombing the place to shit, and then now has to release several $100 billion more to fix up the things that they bombed. And in addition to that, you've got all this kind of sanctions relief on Iran that's part of this MOU, which, if it goes through, would benefit to them to the tune of hundreds of billions of dollars. As you say, Adam, they're all these sanctions are getting lifted on them left and right, which sort of raises the question: what is the point of sanctions? If they are being released, America is in a much worse situation than before this war started.
Huge L.
all of those sanctions were in place. They were in negotiations with Iran. Prior to the conflict, they had said that they weren't going to, create a nuclear weapon. So,
we spoke about all this last week. I mean, it's
a capitulation of the highest order. It's literally the helicopter coming, sort of leaving the embassy in Saigon.
It's worse than that. It's America's Suez. It is the end of their global domination to some extent of geopolitics and being able to use their own economic levers to coerce change.
I would not be surprised if 50 years from now we are studying this moment as the moment that the American empire started to decline.
It's been declining already. I mean, same thing with Britain. Britain had been in decline from sort of the end of World War One, really, through to World War Two, and then at the end of World War Two, they were cooked. That's why they had to have the Americans involved in World War II. So, and then the early 50s, they tried to sort of
rally,
and they just didn't have their economy was cooked. They didn't, while they still had sort of an empire, it was failing.
They were losing their colonies, into the 50s and 60s.
And then they tried to force the similarities between Suez and now are absolutely. It's almost like one for one in some ways.
Well, talk to me a little bit, because I'm actually I'm aware of the Suez Canal and some of the complexity there, but it sounds like you're a bit more read up on it than I am.
Well, it's kind of similar. I spoke about it last week, but
I did listen to the show last week.
The quick high level for anyone who doesn't understand what the Suez is. In middle to late 1950s, Egypt was going through some political changes, and due to various reasons, the Egyptian leadership decided to nationalize the Suez Canal, and they decided to nationalize it and put the toll that you have to pay to go through the Suez Canal would go directly to Egypt. Now, previously, the interests and the management of that canal had been British and French managed, right? Anyway, so the British and French went, fuck that. This is going to destroy our oil supply. This is going to destroy our economy. We have to get it back. And then they talked to the Israelis. The Israelis invaded the Sinai, took the Sinai. British paratroopers dropped in and they took back the bloody canal. But it wasn't a clear-cut victory. They sort of took it, but it was very, very expensive. It was the whole thing basically bankrupted the British government, and then the Prime Minister basically got yeeted out after that. And then what happened was the Americans ended up sort of forcing them to back down and withdraw. There were other things happening politically on the global stage as well, which sort of meant that the British just sort of had to, again, there was no clear resolution. They had an initial tactical goal, but the strategy behind it long term wasn't well thought through. The Israelis were involved. The Israelis were sort of coerced by the Americans to fall back from the Sinai, so then they didn't have the ground. So it basically, the whole thing fell apart because they couldn't
Mm.
sustain it. There wasn't a strategic goal. And their power, quote unquote, on the world stage was, they're not superpowers anymore. They were just powers that had an empire that was failing. And then at home, the British people were just like, why are we doing this? Like, it's not like, it wasn't like NASA was saying that they were stopping shipping. He was just like, well, the money's going to go to us as opposed to you.
Yeah. It's interesting because I think one obviously key difference to all of this in this situation is that the US has unparalleled sort of military might. I mean, you look at the US's military spending, it's more than like the next 8 countries combined or something like that.
Yeah, but they've burned through their stockpiles.
But yes, obviously they burn through their missile stockpiles, and these Patriot missiles, these interceptors and stuff are enormously expensive and take a long time to replenish and all that sort of stuff. But I think it's also part of it is the reliance on cheap drone warfare that's kind of thrown this power balance off. I think if we were talking 10 years ago, the Americans could have, sort of taken the Strait without too much muscle fuss. But the fact that there are these cheap Shahed drones that you can now fire, like a smaller embattled, sort of regional power is now much more empowered to push back against, the most powerful military in the world because of these asymmetric sort of tactics, right? They can just, engage in guerrilla warfare essentially, and they don't need to win the war. They just need the oppressor, the colonialist, expansionist oppressor to lose in order to actually be successful. So I think it's actually changed the nature of what modern warfare actually looks like to a certain extent, as we've seen in the Ukraine-Russia conflict as well, where it's like no one could argue that the Ukrainian military is, in terms of material and money and resources, is superior to the Russians, and yet they've been able to more or less successfully hold them at bay for several years because of these asymmetric tactics.
But the Americans knew that before doing this. Like, this isn't the strategic mistake is still the same.
It's still a mistake.
They knew they shouldn't have done it, and they still did it. And they're like, "Oh, what are we going to do?" Like, it turns out we can't actually achieve anything we wanted to achieve.
Whoopsie
It's like, anyway, but it's just, this is an inflection point, as you said, that we'll be looking at in 50 years, going, this is pretty much where it stopped.
I think it's going to be. I heard one commentator say that this is going to be one of the biggest impetuses. What's the plural of impetus? Impeti? Impetuses. Antipodes. One of the biggest impetuses for people to adopt renewable energy as an outcome of all of this, because people are sick and tired of their energy bills being so closely tied to what happens in some far off place in the Middle East, right? So what you're seeing is ironically, for the president who wants to drill baby drill and restore America's greatness by bringing it back to fossil fuels, he's probably done the one thing that convinces the global community more than anything that they need to get off of fossil fuels. And obviously the chief beneficiary of that is China, right? Because they're the ones making the batteries. They're the ones that are owning the sort of solar panel manufacture and distribution and things like that. So it's if anything, it's sort of hastened the decline of the American empire, which has been sort of fossil fuel focused, right?
I mean, you can have,
Donald Trump.
You can have your strategic reserve.
The green savior of the world.
You can have strategic reserves, but at the end of the day, the oil is a commodity that's traded on global markets, and the price of oil is determined by those global markets. So
yeah, exactly.
Even if you've got 20 million barrels sitting there, like they could be worth nothing, or they could be worth lots and lots and lots. It depends what the market says.
And if
the market doesn't know what it's doing, we've just established. So what does it all mean?
Yeah, so you could absolutely see a situation where people see all this instability. I mean, after the oil crisis in the 70s, I mean, that really sort of increased the salience of the environmental movement and sustainability, and really sort of kickstarted a lot of these green initiatives. And I think you're probably going to see something similar as an outcome of all of this Iran stuff, is that people just go, we can't rely on this anymore. There are certain things, jet fuel and diesel, and certain things that can't easily with current technology be electrified. Jet planes and those sort of things obviously come to mind. But I think from a domestic consumption level, You're going to see a lot more electric cars. You're going to see a lot more panels on roofs. You're going to see a lot more batteries. I think a lot of people are just sick to death of this fucking around with their personal household budget, and they're gonna be pushing towards more renewables, which I suppose is a silver lining to all of this. But in the meantime, there's got to be a lot of pain and suffering. I mean, we're truly deep in winter here, and high fossil fuel prices and high energy prices are going to hit Australian households really hard, which is why we're seeing much higher short-term inflation as well as a result of all of this. So.
I was thinking more a lot of death. There's not a
And
lot
death.
of people who've been
Death and
being
destruction.
killed in Iran. Yeah.
Obviously bad.
Yeah.
It's to call it a strategic blunder
Misstep.
is it really doesn't do justice to the word
Yeah.
blunder.
Yes. Now, Donald Trump, we've said we're in hell, and Donald Trump is hell. The hell that he is creating also includes
I suppose that makes him Satan, right?
AI.
If he's the
Yeah,
king of hell.
I guess he's the devil. Am I the devil? That's a very very fringe reference
Yeah,
for anyone.
that is a deep cut, Adam. And you know what? So deep, I refuse to explain it.
Don't worry about it. That's an in-joke. Okay. We talked about it a couple of weeks ago. They released the Fable 5, the mythos, with its hands tied behind its back, Anthropic model. Anthropic released that model. Then the US government banned it.
Yoink.
He's got an article here, George, talking about sort of the impacts more globally here. So sort of what's the go behind this?
It's a tricky one. So Fable 5, I had a chance to play with it. It's obviously a very capable model, very capable with coding in particular. So, when I was able to successfully use it and get an output, the output was,
Congratulations, you have hacked the government.
Congrats, you are now the NSA. No, so I'm in the mainframe. I'm in. So just to give a bit of context, I was using it for a coding project, and was able to get a really comprehensive output. I didn't need to guide the model in the ways that I need to guide other models like Opus or Sonnet in terms of giving it corrections and keeping it on task. It was just kind of like, this is the thing I want to achieve, like go and do it. And yeah, it managed to do it very well with no errors, right? For this project that I was working on. It's a very, very capable model, right? Now, what the US government has done essentially is they've said no foreign nationals can have access to this model. This model is so dangerous, so useful, so powerful that no foreign...
Yeah, only we can have it.
Only Americans can have it.
Yeah, this
right?
is dangerous. Only we can use the dangerous thing.
And basically Anthropic has said, well, we've got foreign nationals that work in our company, so basically the only way of complying with this order is for us to take Fable offline entirely. Now they have been backgrounding and talking more about their reasoning and all this sort of stuff, and the option to have Fable switched on is now not grayed out in people's terminals and things like that. So they're thinking that they're going to find a way to try and reintroduce it, or they're trying to stage some kind of comeback for that. But obviously, in lieu of the American government lifting this order, I don't see how that's possible.
Well, yeah, especially if it's in the public, in the like if it's just to Claude like subscribers or whatever.
Yeah,
you'd have to be proving your US citizenship status to be able to tick it on.
Yeah,
that's
so
crazy.
There was some talk about how Claude, the Anthropic might ask for people's sort of identity documents or things like that to prove it. But again,
Send us your blood.
There's no proof.
Are you pure?
There's no proof that anyone using the terminal is the same person as the confirmed user, right? So
the piracy argument that people have been using for ages is like, you can't prove it was me that torrented Game of Thrones.
Right, exactly. So it
was my little cousin.
It would be difficult to institute, but I think that the broader problem is that it really is hobbling Anthropic and thus the US's sort of ability to compete in the AI sort of race, right? So given that this is the sort of cutting edge frontier model. To prevent anyone internal or external from Anthropic from using it means that the US government has sort of unofficially placed a ceiling on like how good or useful an AI can be. And when you consider that the Chinese, even with their sort of inferior one generation behind chips and all that sort of stuff, are only 3 months behind, it does mean that
Well, this article kind of suspects a year behind.
I think it's probably less than that, because the Trump administration, in infinite wisdom, earlier this year did release more powerful AI chips from NVIDIA to be sold through to China.
Strategic wizards, the Trump administration.
Strategic wizards.
Yeah, as we have discussed at length, they are very, very good at foreign policy decisions.
If only they could have got Fable to plan the Iran attack, it might have gone slightly differently. However, with all of that said, there was commentary from the NSA that said, within hours, Mythos had broken. So the quote is, on June 11th, Mark Warner, Vice Chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee, said that General Joshua Rudd, who leads the National Security Agency and the Pentagon Cyber Command, had told him that Mythos, quote, broke into almost all of our classified systems, not in weeks, but in hours. Now, we don't know if that was just internal pen testing or if that was breaches from external parties using Fable, this Mythos class
I
of
think
models.
what he's talking about is that
they're
was part of
testing
Glasswing, yeah.
At least I bloody hope so, or otherwise they've got much bigger problems on their hands.
Yeah. So that's what I suspect, but they haven't sort of stated it explicitly. The thing is, as these advanced models are out there, there's a technique called distilling, where you essentially use the model to train the outputs of a new model, which is how sort of DeepSeek advanced so fast. So to say that China's a year behind, I don't think is accurate, because as soon as these advanced models are out there, you can replicate them within weeks or months, or to a certain level of fidelity, right? Even if it's not exact. So it's obviously concerning, because you don't want people to have the ability to break cybersecurity. But America's position in the world is especially with reliance, especially with regard to the stock market and valuations of all these companies, these Mag 7 companies, which are primarily relying on the benefits of AI to pump up their stock prices, to put a handbrake on American growth here is concerning. And the other concerning thing is that clearly, because these models are hosted and controlled in the US, they've already proven that the US government is willing to hobble other countries. Like, if we're relying on Anthropic and OpenAI models and these frontier companies to design and create models and host them over here, if the US government just decides, actually, no, Australia, you can't have these models, right? These latest models or any Anthropic models, like, that presents a real sovereign risk to us here in Australia, because a lot of businesses are now starting to adopt and rely on these services to just say, oh, we're America and we're going to cut you off because of our sovereign interest, is obviously something that should be concerning to us.
Maybe we shouldn't do that.
I would say the argument is that we need to invest and create our own. I mean, we're already investing in data centers here in Australia. There are data centers being built.
Yeah, I mean,
but I think
that's a whole other problem.
That's a whole other. Local communities are not thrilled about data centers going up in their area, as we've seen evidenced by lots of protests in sort of rural America, right? But I think it to my mind, it sort of suggests that we need to really encourage local development of our own companies and models to make sure that we're insulated from this kind of sovereign risk. If the US government says, actually, Anthropic's just for us, go sit and spin, that's going to break a lot I don't know.
I mean, the examples this article talks about are, the development of the nuclear weapon that, it was only a few years after, a few years after the war, when Britain, signaled intent to develop nuclear weapons, that the US actually decided that they were going to, help them. But, it becomes,
this is the Oppenheimer, like Fat Man, Little Boy creation.
No, this is
theory.
later.
This is after
later than that.
Afterwards.
Right, okay.
Yeah. So the point being here is that, strategically, you could see if the US keeps going. What we're saying here is if the US keeps going down this path, we see AI less becoming a corporate. It restricts the corporate growth and the corporate use and the internet, the globalization of AI, and it becomes more a strategic tool,
a weapon
for nationalist purposes.
Yeah.
It's where kind of while them, I think everything we've talked about of the US like trying to restrict and like the way that prevents them from competing and all those kind of sovereign risk kind of things as well. But I think the idea of them also locking down, something like Mythos that can break all their classified systems in hours, I'm like, maybe almost we do need to put a ceiling on the capabilities of these models. Like, I think what good comes of that being available to anybody? Like, the thing I said before of like, no, only we can use the dangerous thing. It's like, it's still dangerous, even if only the US can use it.
Only we can have the torture nexus.
Yeah, like the invention, like Oppenheimer before, the invention of nuclear weapons, even if only they had nuclear weapons, if Russia never got near them, if no one else ever got near them and they just bombed Japan, that's still bad, even if only the US got access to them, right?
The genie is out of the bottle to a certain extent. China is making strides at pace to this. So do I want the first super intelligent AI to be run out of China or the US? I don't know. It's kind of a Sophie's choice there. It's
that seems like a real...
I don't know if I like either of those options, to be perfectly honest.
Can option 3 be I shoot myself?
Go to the woods, Tom.
Yeah, either of those sounds bad. But just, the quote that they have in this article here, I think from someone from what's called the Carnegie Endowment. Oh, it's a think tank. But they were just like, do you think the Trump administration that just refused to give you access to Fable is then going to let you buy enough frontier chips to train your own Fable style AI yourself?
Yeah. They've got a real chokehold. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of like, I don't know, whether or not if China's going to develop it or the US is going to develop it. If China is relying on like chips from NVIDIA or whatever, it's kind of like we need to maybe stop anyone being able to develop something this dangerous.
This article presumes that there is some strategy behind what Trump does on a day-to-day basis.
That's a good point.
There isn't. So, whether or not this, he's put a ban on for now. It could very well be, removed within the next 30 days.
True.
Who knows?
I guess I say we say Trump put a ban on it. Really, it's like the side, like the defense team, maybe not him.
He doesn't know shit about fuck. He doesn't know. What it
he
is.
probably doesn't know. It doesn't know whatever. So
But again, let me tell you a little fable. There was a little boy called Donald who grew up in Queens, and he grew up to be king of the United States. It's an incredible story. Yeah. Many people believe so. According to this article,
handsome man.
Huge penis.
Handsome.
Doesn't matter what anyone says. Spy agencies are likely to regain access to Mythos, says a former British intelligence official. Negotiations are already underway. So I think it's got to be a matter of time before the US government has to relax their stance on this. But as you say, Adam, if it really does mean that private companies don't have access to these sort of models in the way that they did before, the scope and the ability for these AI companies to realize the extraordinary gains that they need to realize in order to pay back the venture capital funding
the bubble?
is reduced and could pop the bubble, right?
Yeah. We're going to keep the bubble going. It's the only, we learned here in the housing market in Australia, the only way for the bubble not to pop is to keep growing the
bubble indefinitely. Yeah, so the thing is, I don't think anyone can deny that the AI venture capital sort of funding apparatus is a bubble, but as to whether it's going to be a destructive bubble or something else is still yet to be seen. I mean, the railways at the time that they were being built over 100 years ago were a bubble. And they popped, and everyone saw that this new technology was going to change and revolutionize the world. And a lot of companies spent a lot of money laying track. And when it came time to realize the gains from all of that, the markets weren't there. They needed to be developed over the next quarter century, right? So, however, once the tracks are laid, future organization, even if the company that laid them goes out of business, future companies can still use them and develop them and get benefits out of them. And
Unless you're in
stuff,
Australia,
right?
where we ripped up half our train lines, but that's a whole
Well,
nother
different
story.
Super fast train. Come on.
But the point I'm making, though, is that, even if the company that builds the initial infrastructure isn't the one that benefits out of it, the future organizations, future companies, as the market grows and adopts the technology, will be set up to be able to benefit from it. But
George, that assumes a level of selflessness from the modern capitalist machine that
I don't think it's
is non-existent.
Speaking of copyright, there are.
Yeah,
It
we will
wasn't
build all this
selflessness.
stuff, and future people will benefit from it. It might not be us that makes a huge profit from it, but society will benefit. Said, that guy, that cartoon of the one guy says something and he gets thrown out the window from a board meeting. Like the guy who says
to
that
be clear,
gets
that's
killed.
not the intention. The company that and puts the investment in wants to be the beneficiary of it. I think the outcome, though, is sometimes different, where it's like, yes, this was a useful technology. We spent a shitload of money building it out, and then the outcome is future generations are the ones that really benefit from it, rather than the people who laid the tracks. That's obviously not what they want, but that might be the outcome, right?
I think that's probably a good segue into our next story, which is to circle back to love circling back here on the show, by the way.
Let's put a pin in it. Circle back. Check in.
Take this offline, which
Let's
is still
circle back.
online.
Let's align.
Circling back to the UK, where maybe Keir Starmer has laid the groundwork for future generations of Labor leaders to succeed. Just like everything we say on the show, we do a show on a Sunday, and then within 24 hours, everything we said is outdated, and a bunch of things changed. So last week we spoke about the fact that Andy Burnham had won the
The by-election.
By-election of where it was. He was the former mayor of Manchester. We said that, obviously this is going to see what Keir Starmer does over the next few months. This is going to be an interesting sort of thing that develops. And within 24 hours, Keir Starmer announced his resignation.
Yeah. Watch this space. I'll wait. They ain't fucking around.
We watched it and it developed, just as we promised. So Keir Starmer has announced his resignation as UK Prime Minister. We'll watch a couple of minutes of this, but mainly just to see how fucking delulu this guy is as to why he's resigning and what he achieved. I thought it was pretty interesting. You'll hear Ode to Joy blasting initially, which comes out as one of the protesters who was celebrating his demise was playing. Also, I don't know about you guys. I would be a little bit disheartened if when I was coming out to resign, everyone was cheering quite so loudly. Woo!
Yeah.
Fuck yeah! George is resigning! Fuck yes!
Yeah, is that a fuck yeah, you're resigning? Or
I think so.
Or are they the supporters?
No.
There's a guy standing off at the side with an applause. It's not that hard.
Yeah,
He's just solemn applause.
Respectful applause, guys.
Solemn applause.
Thank you. Walking up.
It's like a 30-second applause break. Nothing Keir Starmer has ever done has gotten him so much applause.
This street 2 years ago was the proudest moment of my life. A new Labour government, the first in 14 years. A page in our country's history turned after years of disappointment and despair. The chance to change the lives of millions of people for the better. That's what I came into politics for. The journey to that point was not easy. 6 years ago, I inherited a Labour Party that was politically, financially, and morally bankrupt. I was told time and time again that my party was finished, that we were consigned to history, that a majority at the general election, let alone a landslide majority, was impossible. But we proved those people wrong because we changed our party. ripping out the poison of anti-Semitism, restoring trust on the economy, defence and national security, and becoming a party that once again stood proudly with, not against, our national flag. The hard work of change was with a singular purpose, not power for power's sake, but to change Britain for the better.
And your contention is that you did that, Keir. Okay.
Yeah.
So why are you resigning again?
This
okay.
feels like I've won my second term of government speech.
Yes.
I'm just like, when I inherited, we did all this and we did this. This is amazing. Like,
We're so good.
We're so good.
Anyway, I'm here out the front of number 10 to tell you I'm resigning for unknown reasons.
To build a fairer country with dignity and respect, where everyone is seen, everyone is valued, wealth and opportunity for all, not just the privileged few. And look at what we've achieved in just 2 years. An economy that is stronger, growing faster than our peers, wages rising faster than inflation in every single month since we came to power, investment secured, infrastructure being built, an end to austerity, with the fastest fall in NHS waiting lists for 17 years.
All of this talk about how good they've been for the working class is such a joke. I mean, the big stumble, was they were going to cut the winter fuel payment, right? So the subsidy that effectively goes to lower income people so they can afford to pay for their heating in the sort of brutal UK winters, and it was so roundly opposed, and people were so disgusted with it that they eventually flipped on it. This government has been plagued with trying to cut corners on the low end of town in order to facilitate defense spending and all this sort of stuff, and it's just gone over so poorly. So to say all this stuff about how you've improved people's lives is just, it's such a joke. Like, to hear it come out of his mouth, like, you could scarcely believe it. Do you believe this? Like, I suppose you must, but
the biggest improvement in rights for workers and renters in a generation, the biggest uplift in defence spending since the Cold War, small boat crossings falling, asylum hotels closing, protecting young people from social media, and 500,000 children being lifted out of poverty because of the choices that I made.
Not that we made, not that my government made, but choices that I made. Me, I did it all. It was me.
You should all be very disappointed in yourselves.
Yeah. Anyway, so we'll skip ahead to the end where he talks about wanting to spend time with his family. Lol.
For Parliament returns in September. I will remain in post as Prime Minister until the contest is complete. And I will do everything I can to ensure an orderly handover of power. I will also give my successor my full and unequivocal support, knowing that they will inherit a Britain that is far stronger and fairer than the one I inherited 2 years ago.
Andy, I loosened the jar, just so you know.
Better prepared for the challenges ahead and better able to ensure the Labour Party secures a second term in office. I want to thank all of those friends and colleagues who have been at my side for these past 6 years or so, for their incredible commitment, service and support. I want to thank the brilliant Number 10 staff and our country's extraordinary civil service who dedicate their lives to public service. And when I leave the biggest job in the country, I shall spend more time on the most important job, being the best husband I can to my fantastic wife, Vic, who has been a rock by my side through good times and bad, and being the best dad I can to my beautiful children, who are my pride and my joy.
Yeah. So it just seems completely fucking detached from reality to me, does it not? Like, he's getting all emotional at the end. My biggest pride and joy. I think the
Oh,
biggest
well.
loser out of all of this is probably going to be George Fouracres on SNL UK, who did his really spot-on Keir Starmer impression. I think it's poor George. I feel bad for him.
Yeah, I feel really bad for him. Watching SNL UK, I was a bit like, he's really funny as Keir Starmer, and I'd never really heard Keir Starmer talk for that much, but then like seeing all these speeches, I'm like, holy shit, he does talk like that.
Yeah.
In the strongest possible terms.
Yeah.
Hello. All those kinds of things.
So good.
Amazing. Brilliant. I love Twin Rotors in the comments bringing up, one of the fantastic other candidates in the Makerfield by-election of Count Binface. I believe formerly Lord Buckethead. I think they're the same guy doing that. But yeah, his comment that this is the first election in history where the candidate has said, vote for me, our party's leader is shite. I love how deeply unserious some UK politics is.
It's just ridiculous. Twin Rotors in the chat. I assume this is a quote from Jeremy Corbyn. It does sound like the exact sort of thing you would say. Quote, if the Labour Party was politically, financially, and morally bankrupt, why was he so keen to lead it?
Yeah.
And that's that little swipe about, I brought the Labour Party in from the cold and, sort of erase the scourge of anti-Semitism, like a not so veiled swipe at Jeremy Corbyn there as well. It's like, I heard a commentator say about Keir Starmer, a journalist who had spent quite a lot of time with him, said something to the effect of, the reason Keir Starmer has been so unsuccessful is because he doesn't understand, or he doesn't see that the populace want large, whole-scale change. He thinks that the country has just been managed poorly by idiots, and all Keir, needed to do to come in and fix the country was bring a steady pair of hands in and manage it correctly. He doesn't think that the system itself is broken. It just needs to be managed better. And there was no overarching vision for his prime ministership. Like, I can tell you what Zoran Mamdani wants to do with New York, right? He wants lower rents. He wants fast and free buses, and he wants free childcare. I can tell you 3 dot points what his vision for New York is. I can't tell you what Keir's vision for the UK was because he never communicated one. He never had one. His vision was just a steady pair of hands. And
they didn't even really do that.
And they didn't even deliver that.
In this article, it talks about the fact that they wanted to, wanted to pitch after all the leadership, the Tory leadership circle of hell. The concept was, that Labor would come in and would sort of right the ship, so to speak, and there would be that stability. But, the soap opera, sort of continued with all this, what's the guy's name? The US ambassador, Epstein connection.
Mandelson.
Mandelson, yeah.
Yeah, so, that was really the start of the whole thing sort of falling apart, right?
Yeah, and then there's various backflips that they did as well. So it's, look, I think it's, I don't know. I'm not on the ground in the UK. I don't understand sort of the nuances of the issues that they're facing. It does feel like this whole thing is a massive overreaction by Labor. Like, I don't know.
All the commentary has been for months that he's been a dead man walking. I mean, the Mandelson thing was a fucking fiasco from start to finish, right? Like, he was found to be not of good enough character to occupy the role that he put him in. And yet somehow, mysteriously, none of this information found its way to Keir Starmer, and he overruled it and put him in anyway. Like, all of that, the budgetary situation has been a nightmare. They've been trying to, he said austerity is over, but they've very, very much been seen as austerity light in terms of trying to tidy up the budget, because their budget is in a woeful situation, and their promise was growth, and they didn't deliver on that. So people see the material circumstances of their lives getting worse and worse. They see, Farage and parties like Reform and Restore, sort of rising, saying the problem is actually all these immigrants, right? And not any of these other things. And that's why your life is worse. And they're being increasingly persuaded by that message. It's, they just didn't do any of what they needed to do. And for the longest time, the refrain was, we've got 5 years. We've got 5 years to figure it out. We've got 5 years. And
You've had 13 to figure it out.
yeah,
Yeah.
you've had 2 in power, and you've done nothing with them. So, like, as to your point last week, Adam, where you say, well, you're switching out the leader on top of the same group of shitheads isn't really going to increase the party's prospects at the next election. I think you're probably right. But Andy Burnham, who won his by-election, does seem like he's a little bit more switched on, a little bit more populist, a little bit more engaged with, the youth, a little bit more, sort of progressive and willing to undertake big change. But the fact is, the balance sheet for the UK is only going to allow you to do so much.
They've only got
right?
they've only got so many choices. People think that the government can come in and just wave their magic wand, but it doesn't quite work like that. Not to mention there's, the way the UK political system works. There's entrenched power bases, wealth. It's there. Like it's not as simple as just at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Look, and there's been lots of reporting on this. I'm going to do it, and at the end of the day, I love a big grand statement like that. This is all because of Brexit. David Cameron was the last Prime Minister who was there for 6 years. They Brexited against, and then Farage was the one behind that as well. It's all Europe's fault. It's all Europe's fault, which is why you've got these problems. Well, they've left Europe. They've been out of Europe now for 10 years, and shit's just gotten worse.
And growth has been sluggish because they don't have access to the single market. And,
associated political instability with that, because there's since David Cameron, they've had like fucking six or seven
prime ministers in 10 years or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, because none of them can do anything because their hands are tied behind their back.
Yeah, as Twin Rotors is also saying in the chat, they've first past the post voting as well, which certainly doesn't help. Like, just because people were dissatisfied with the Tories and swept Labor to victory doesn't mean that they loved Labor. Labor's unfavourables are really high still. Keir Starmer's particularly so. So
I mean, the same story replicates across most Western democracies at the moment. Is that the middle, the centrist party is elected because the other fringes are too crazy, or they've had a bad experience with whatever came previously. But again, people's material circumstances in America suck. People's material circumstances in Australia suck, and in the UK is the same. But at the end, the other cooked thing, which like, they're still a lot better than large parts of the rest of the world. Like, we're actually doing pretty good. The standard of living we have in the West, while half the world's in fucking conflict, is actually pretty fucking good. Because if this was 100 years ago and we had conflict on this scale, like, we'd all be eating, there'd be like food rationing. So, like, we've just come out of a global pandemic which nearly killed off global markets entirely, and the system as we know it.
And killed a lot of people.
Like, the fact that we're just still going along, kind of like we said before, as though everything's fine, the fact that we're still here doing that and able to do it without too much second thought is kind of crazy.
Yeah. The three of us can be sitting here at microphones on a Sunday morning, like, in the middle of all this is remarkable.
We haven't got large power blackouts. Like, so look, I mean, yes,
people expect though that
things are going to get better.
Things are only going to get better because that's what's happened over the last generation or two, and we're now at an impasse where those trend lines can't hold. I just want to read a very, very quick part of a poem. I'm sorry, you'll forgive me for just banging through this, but it's
poetry hour. Okay,
often referenced.
Doing some sweet music to go along with it. Some like.
No, that's all right. So it's called the Second Coming by William Butler Yeats, and it's talks about where that phrase "the centre cannot hold" comes from, and it's been sort of oft quoted at the moment now. But I think it's instructive for the moment that we live in, right? And he was writing this, many years ago, but it's I think it's sort of really relevant today. So forgive me, very quick poetry, and then we'll go back to the news. So it's called The Second Coming. Turning and turning in the widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. Things fall apart, the centre cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. The blood-dim tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. Surely some revelation is at hand. Surely the second coming is at hand. The second coming! Hardly those words are out, when a vast image out of Spiritus Mundi troubles my sight, Somewhere in sands of the desert, a shape with lion body and the head of a man, a gaze blank and pitiless as the sun, is moving its slow thighs while all about it real shadows of the indigent desert birds. The darkness drops again, but now I know that 20 centuries of stony sleep were vexed to nightmare by a rocking cradle, and what rough beast, its hour come round at last, slouches toward Bethlehem to be born. And that just like perfectly encapsulates for me Trumpism and Farage and like that idea of, you know, the beast with pitiless eyes. Like, doesn't that just describe to a T the moment that we're in? Is like everything
we're expecting a second coming of Christ, and we get
everything is falling apart, and we expect the second coming of Christ. But what we get is the Antichrist. What we get is some rough beast slouching towards Bethlehem. I don't think you could put it any better than that. Like it's just a perfect encapsulation of this moment that we live in.
And also,
I know reading poetry is not going to win us any fans on the internet, but there you go. I thought that was good.
So, like, pardon my religious ignorance, but isn't also the second coming of Christ the end of days?
Well, the Antichrist, it signals the start of the end of the apocalypse.
Revelations is really just
Revelations is fucking crazy.
Someone
bro.
had an acid trip and then wrote it down. Is what happened with Revelations, and then they were like, and then the Catholic Church was like at Nicaea was like, "Do you want to put it in? Yeah,
we need an ending.
Yeah, we need an ending."
And the other quote is from Gramsci, who was an Italian Marxist. The old world is dying and the new world struggles to be born. In this interregnum, a great variety of morbid symptoms appear. Now is the time of monsters. This I do think this is the world that we're living in. This turn to fascism is the inevitable outcome of the descent into the complete inability of the center to be able to hold, to do things and achieve things. Is this kind of happens every century or so, where things get so bad, things fall apart, the center can't hold, and then we turn to fascism. And you would have thought that we would have learnt this lesson by now, especially given what happened, 80 something years ago, but apparently not. It's something that we're just doomed to repeat over and over again. It seems
either
like
fascism or you have severe civil unrest, and then the system sort of gets reset after it, and then rebuilt. But
cycles.
To do that, it costs lots of.
There's a lot of blood. There's a lot of blood that happens in the meantime in the Great Reset before things sort of stabilize.
Think about France. Like they had their ruling aristocracy and the king for years and years and years. But yes, they overthrew their king and they had a violent revolution. People were hungry in the streets.
They had a sequence of violent revolutions where the king got tossed out, and then another king got brought in, and then that king got tossed out, and then Napoleon came in, and it was a good half.
It was like the 1850s by the time it all fucking resolved.
Yeah, it was a good half
Yeah.
century before things sort of stabilized, and a lot of fucking people died in the meantime, right?
So, yeah, it's when you look at it through the lens of history, you go, well, we're just in another phase, and maybe this phase will be less bad, perhaps, than some other phases, and maybe that is.
I don't know what leads you to that conclusion.
And maybe, well, yeah.
They didn't have nukes during the French Revolution.
This is true.
But they didn't have Instagram stories either. We'll solve the problem one Instagram story at a time.
Just the perfect Instagram story at the right possible moment can change the world.
The right
a drop becomes a river, Tom.
But yeah, look, they're basically, in terms of where we're at the moment, they're going to do in July, I think it is, they're going to do a internal ballot with the Labour Party members, and they will
leadership contest,
they will pick their new
But West
leader.
Streeting is not standing for it. He's already backed Andy Burnham. I don't know if Angela Rayner, who's the other possible contender, is going to go for it. Like, it seems as though, from all the commentary I've seen, it's going to be a coronation of Andy Burnham. They're just going to walk into the exact same mistake that the Democrats made with Kamala Harris in the United States. We haven't got time. We got to get someone popular. Then we got to do it right now. And so we can't have a contest of ideas. We can't possibly stress test any of these people.
Strategy.
We just got to put someone in and hope for the best, and just hope that his natural charisma and leadership will just carry us through to victory. It
generally works
man.
for maybe one election cycle. Like in Australia, like it seems like you'll get through maybe you might get through the next election. Maybe you scrape through the next
Maybe you
election.
save the furniture. That's what they call it when you
correct.
sort of, prevent all your members from getting wiped out. But, I don't know. I'm not confident of Labor's ability to win the next election, right?
Yeah, it'll give them a sugar hit, and then it'll drop off. But over what time frame it drops off, I don't know. Unless Andy Burnham is in fact the second coming of Christ somehow, and he's
I do
Churchill.
wonder.
This is the other thing.
Slashing towards number 10.
The British people look at their leaders. They look at Churchill. They look at their kings, and they expect this sort of
but
heroic
Churchill wasn't
form of
Churchill.
leadership.
You know what I mean? Like this idea that we have of leaders of the past as being perfect bastions of morality and leadership. All
Churchill
of these
was
people.
a fucking psycho to some extent.
Yeah,
Churchill.
not a great guy.
Yeah, it basically caused a genocide in Bangladesh, right? Because anyway, but like the idea that even the leaders that we valorize, the leaders of the past, were the leaders that we think of them now as is not true. Like Churchill wasn't Churchill then. Churchill was just the PM, and he got shit canned unceremoniously once the war was done because.
Like Gallipoli was Churchill's fault. That was a Churchill operation. Like in Australia, like there were lots of failings that Churchill had, leading up to his crowning moments during World War II. And
he was right about Hitler, and he was right about the war and all that sort of stuff. Like the way history remembers you is based on a few select moments that are outside of your control as to whether you're remembered as a good leader or a Neville Chamberlain, right, as a bad leader. It's not obvious to me that Andy Burnham is so charismatic, so powerful, so wonderful.
He's going to change the system.
That he's going to change the entire system that sits underneath Keir Starmer, right? I just don't believe that. And to a certain extent, I wonder to the extent to which any one person can really change things and make the kind of difference that people would want to see. Like leadership is important, but I actually don't know if it's that important.
Systems and institutions
are more important.
Are what changes people's and decisions, right? That will and directions that will change people's circumstances. But you need strong institutions and funding behind those to be able to affect change. So, as an example, the NHS, the Medicare here in Australia, like they are not led by strong leadership. They have
great man theory of history is actually pretty weak when it comes to the evidence.
The Romans like. Yes, they had Caesars, and like in theory, if the Roman Empire collapsed, but it collapsed over a period of several hundred years, and if it was really judged on the leaders that were there at the time running the thing, it would have collapsed much sooner. They just had relatively good systems in place that kept things moving, and maybe that's where we're at now in Western culture, is that we have pretty good systems. So while this is why we're able to sit here and say, well, things are going fine because the systems are still working to a certain extent. Now, that will change over time. Things will depreciate. You'll have things like robo-debt or whatever else, or, that's creep in. Or funding will get pulled out and all of a sudden the thing won't really work quite as good anymore. But, so that's where leadership is important, to be able to work out, where the cracks are forming and to either plaster them up or rebuild the whole thing entirely.
Yeah, and you do get leaders like FDR, and with the New Deal, basically you threw
he created the system, right? He
created
the system.
New systems. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He sort of saw that coming out of the Depression, what was happening there, and said, no, we need to make something new. We need to make something better. And so that is where a charismatic leader can really make a difference. Is without FDR, you can't imagine the New Deal or any of that stuff getting pushed through, because the systems wouldn't have allowed it if left to their own devices at the time. But if you read the book Why Nations Fail, it talks a lot about economic inclusivity or exclusivity and political inclusivity or exclusivity. So whether the systems, the political and economic systems, are inclusive of people generally or not is actually a larger determinant. Like individual leadership actually really doesn't factor into that book at all. It's more about talking about the systems that are in place. Are they inclusive? Do they have broad appeal? Do they bring people along with them in their prosperity? Is there a large growing middle class that is the beneficiary of all this change or not? And if not, things tend to drift in one direction or the other. If you've got inclusive political and economic institutions, things tend to get better over time. If you don't, things tend to get worse. And we've just been the beneficiaries of all of this political economic inclusion over the last century that we think, oh, things just keep getting better and better and they're always going to. And it's like, actually, not necessarily, right?
We've been the beneficiaries of the American, century, which has lasted not quite a century.
80 years.
Now, speaking of leadership and changing the system, we're going to move back to Australia. And don't worry, there's a new political party forming that will change the system, quote unquote.
Oh, thank God. More political parties. That's what we need here in Australia. Thank Christ.
No, what we need is more centrists.
More centrists.
More centrists.
Well, if the centre can't hold, George, then you need to plug more shit into the centre, I guess.
You need a deeper hole.
I don't think that's how that works.
you need you just need to keep digging the hole. If you're trying to plug the hole, keep digging it. That's how it works, right?
Yeah, you know what else is a centre? No, I'm not going to make that joke. 2 independent Australian MPs have banded together to launch a new centrist political party, which they say is a response to an increasingly divisive landscape. The Community Strong Australia Party, launched in Canberra on Thursday, will offer, quote, unity over division and reason over rage, unquote. We'll have no leader, great, off to a great start, and will allow members to vote freely rather than along party lines, which begs the question, what is that? How is that a political party? How is that? Are you just sharing ride shares? You're just splitting an Uber? What makes it a political party?
Sharing
if you have
funding.
no leader and all your members can vote freely, how is that a political party?
Sharing funding, I think, is a key point here. So it's Zali Steggall, how you pronounce it, Allegra Spender, who are basically former Liberal people, I believe. Is that correct?
Well, I know they're Teals. They're sort of Teal independents now. I don't know.
They were elected in the Teal independents.
I don't know what their sort of affiliations were.
Were they elected as Teals? I don't know. I can't remember. I don't remember.
Zali Steggall was the one who unseated Tony Abbott.
Yeah.
Yeah, so she was always independent.
Community independents. Yeah, in terms of their political life in politics, they've always been independents. But I don't know what Zali Steggall or Allegra Spender did prior to.
Zali Steggall was formerly a barrister and was a Winter Olympian.
Yeah,
wow. There you go. Yeah. They have been fairly outspoken. I know they've been fairly sort of not outspoken, but they've been sort of important people within the Teal movement. Allegra Spender gets a lot of interviews on various media channels when there's they want a sort of commentary on how the Teals will sort of talk to on or a Teal perspective perhaps on government policy or opposition policy. Because obviously each party is always courting the Teals to try and sort of get votes for whatever
get legislation through.
Yeah. But it's. I mean, they're going to. They've put this through to the to the Electoral Commission. The key issues to the party will be housing affordability, cost of living pressures, climate change, childcare, education, healthcare, which is pretty much the same values,
same platform as what they had before. Yeah, which is I think if you got a focus group in the room and said, what do Australians care about? I think, that's probably a pretty good cross-section of what most normie people care about in Australia, right? So, yes, that's good. But as a party with 2 seats, I don't know what change they could reasonably affect in any of those debates.
So the way I see this, people were talking about, and we talked about it maybe a month and a bit ago, would the Teals form their own political party? Well, this
we've been talking about that for years.
Seem to be perhaps at least some of them going, well, maybe we should do that.
Well, in response to the campaign funding changes that Labor has pushed through to kind of make independents harder to get elected, which is why I think George, you're absolutely right.
Main driving force behind this, right? It's like okay, well, in order to stay relevant in the new funding landscape, it's better for us to be a party than it is to be a collection of independents.
But they're still going to behave like a collection of independents. That's sort of the thing. Like, we have no leader and everyone can vote however they want, but we're a party, so we get different funding.
Yeah, collection of independents. Yeah, it's not really a great rallying cry.
Yeah, we are unique like everyone else.
Yes.
like all that sort of stuff. And they call it the name, I think, is just the biggest eye roll ever. They've called themselves the Community Strong Australia Party, which hits like they just canvassed a bunch of like a word cloud and picked the 3 biggest words. They came out like, what were the most ones? Strong, Australia, community. All right, put them together.
Yeah, man, they're fucking humping that word cloud for a while before they came up with that one.
They 100% did that. But there's a reason for that, because if you go into the ballot box, the average punter, they don't know
the name of the party.
You've got, however many parties on there, and you don't like Labor, you don't like the Liberals, you don't like, whatever, and you're going to look for a name, that actually reads pretty well. It's like Family First.
Yeah.
Like, they're a conservative party, but it sounds
Animal Rights
great.
Party or something.
Yeah. There's that
Hunters
other
and
one.
Fishers. It's just recognizable.
Legalized marijuana, but that's very
Yeah.
specific.
Yeah, but there's that other one that's really Sustainable Australia. That's the one, like the really sneaky one, because it's like you'd think, oh, they're like a huge like green sort of thing for like climate, right? No, they're not. But that's the thing I always say before every goddamn election. You are not time limited in the booth. If you don't know who they are, look them up
Google.
on your phone.
Do a vote
you can
compass.
do it right there.
Just do a vote
you can do it
compass.
right there in the booth.
Yeah.
Like, if you are like, who are the Hunters and Fishers Party? You can read about them a bit. Like,
People are just thinking about that sausage,
have a
man.
legal,
People are thinking about the sausage so hard. They're in the booth. They're
You
thinking
have a
about the
legal
sauce
right-
dripping down the side.
Yeah, you have a legal right to vote. They can't just be like, hurry the fuck up.
Yeah.
It is it does. Yeah, there is this. You're right. You're completely right, Tom. There is this perceived time pressure when you're doing the voting process.
I guess
Gotta
you want
get
just the
everything
rest
out.
of you want the rest of your Saturday, I suppose. You're like,
Well,
all right, I
it's
suppose
even
I
just
don't
being
wanna-
in the queue, like you feel like you have to keep
mandatory
the queue
voting
moving,
thing, right? Like it's kind of like, well, we have to be here, we have to do this, and
have
so
to
people
do this.
just want
I don't
want to
spend an hour in the queue. I don't want to. You want to just get out of there and I don't know, go back to having a fun Saturday, which I get, but it's also like, don't just pick something that's like you like the sound of because it matters. Like you actually look into it.
Vote Compass, I always recommend it every election cycle. It asks you a bunch of questions about your positions and how strongly you feel about them, and then it gives you a ranking of how closely those parties align to your
What you think?
your perspectives. What do you think about policy, and therefore which party is going to most closely align with your perspective on policy? Right? Like I think everyone should do it.
And it's funny because, again, we'll talk. It's probably a good segue into our next article, which is about a new Lowy poll, Lowy Institute survey has been released. And people don't necessarily vote on policy; they vote on feelings. And there is one of the stats that they measured in this new survey, which is of about 2,000 people, I believe. Said that people who say cultural diversity has been good for the nation has plunged from 90% in 2024 to 73% in 2026.
Ouch.
Which, contextualizes perhaps the rise of one nation. The other things they surveyed were, do you trust China or the US? Like, who do you trust more as a superpower? And
Real Sophie's
US,
choice of superpowers there.
The US has plummeted now to 36%.
Why?
And China has risen.
Just an interesting bubble, like kind of like shape in that graph, though, in the trust of them, because like in 2017, it was like 61% US, 54% kind of China, like they were close together. And then, what happened around 2020 in China? Nobody remembers.
It's COVID,
but like things
right?
just kind of plummet heaps. And in 2022, you got this split of like only 12% China, 65% the US, but then the US started going down and China comes back up a bit and now they're 31-28. Yeah, George has it on the screen for any of you watching the video. Just seeing this like, so we're kind of back in the ratio we were at in 2017, just everyone kind of doesn't like either of them.
But there's still less. Do you know what I mean? Like there's still a lot of
Everyone
people who say they don't trust either.
less.
Yeah. But like kind of on par. There was a period where it's like we really like to trust the US and do not trust China at all. And now it's like, oh, wait a minute, we don't trust the US that much either.
Yeah. They also say
and that's got to be Trump related. It's got to be
Trump is most people have.
Something else happened around 2016, 17 in America. Can you guys
what
remember what that was? And then something
Trump.
different was going on in 2022. Was anything different happening in America? Who was in charge then?
Trump has. They did do a survey on Donald Trump and whether or not they found him, or they trust him. And this is Australians saying whether they trust him, and that was fairly low as well, 1 in 5 or something like that.
Yeah, I thought one of the questions was like, do you trust that Donald Trump will do either the right thing for the the right thing for the world make a decision that's the right thing for the world? And even 20% I think's higher than I would have expected, because what the fuck? Are you looking at the same shit I am?
Something that really struck me was the share of respondents who were very pessimistic or pessimistic about Australia's economic performance over the next 5 years. And that share is nearly at 60%. Nearly 2/3 of Australians believe that they are very pessimistic about where we're going to go over the next 5 years, which is more than its previous high of 45% in 2020, right? During the height of the pandemic, people were more confident about our next 5 years economically than they are now. So clearly something's happening, right? People are insecure about Iran and Hormuz. They're concerned about AI. They're concerned about the global economy potentially going into recession. And all of those things are flowing through to their voter preferences, as we've seen the rise of One Nation and these other kind of far-right parties that are happy to capitalize on this discontent in order to buoy themselves in the polls, right? So, Twin Rotors in the chat is saying that they ripped up the JCPOA. Yeah, that might have also been a factor in people's reduction in confidence in America around sort of global stability and things like that. But it's really it's interesting because the Australian economy, if you look at the numbers, is not doing badly, and yet.
Well, I just think
the confidence that people have about what's going to happen, where things are going,
it's because we live in a globalized society. It's not about so much Australia. It's what's happening, in their fucking algorithms and their feeds and the news every day. We talked about it 3 weeks ago. The world is at the highest state of. It's the least peaceful that's been since the end of World War II, and that reflects in the fact that people. They actually measured that in this survey as well, that people are feeling less safe. They're economically they're feeling pessimistic, socially they're feeling pessimistic, and they're feeling unsafe. So all of these things combined, it doesn't matter how good. Again, everything's fine, but we don't feel great about it.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. The disconnect between the numbers and our vibes is really quite startling. I mean, if we look at, I've got some numbers up here from the RBA, the key economic indicator snapshot. Cash rate target is 4.35%, high given the last historic trends of the last sort of 20, 30 years, but not crazy high, higher than normal. Economic growth is 2.5%. Inflation is 4.2%. That's, again, higher than normal, but not crazy high. The unemployment rate is 4.5%. Again, a little bit higher than normal, but not crazy. Excuse me. Wage growth is at 3.3. Net foreign liabilities, 24.5% of GDP. China's GDP growth is 5%. Average weekly earnings is just under $1,600. Like, if you look at the numbers, it's not bad. Like, this is not a pants on fire type situation that if you saw these numbers in the 90s...
I haven't got a hyperinflation Zimbabwe situation where, like, your economy is collapsing.
Yeah, people's cost of living is higher, inflation is higher than it normally is, and people's wages aren't necessarily keeping pace with that. But we've had much worse numbers than this for the Australian economy over the last 20, 30 years at various points during various sort of situations. And the discontent has never been anywhere near as high as it is now. So this is, I guess, what people talk about when they talk about consumer confidence, right? And it seems to me to be largely untethered from the discontent seems untethered from their actual economic circumstances to some degree. The numbers are not as bad as you would think looking at how discontented people feel, is what I'm saying.
I mean, Twin Waters has just put in a chat. He's mentioned Murdoch, Farage, Hanson, Trump, but like Murdoch's probably. We did this a couple of weeks ago. We sort of forgot to talk about, like why is there a difference between. I can't remember the exact question. Like how are all the conservative movements connected? And one of the answers is Murdoch is a big part of it. Yeah. I mean, we're being told that things are terrible. Like Channel 7. And our algorithms will select a path that sort of prioritizes rage bait and hate.
And
like you're not going to
social
learn
media, right?
Yeah.
Like that. I really do think that is a massive part of it. When we look at, if you read the anxious generation, talks about how people in their teens are negatively affected by social media, and their rates of poor mental health and issues, and their rates of self-confidence and all those things have gone down. Obviously, that book focuses almost entirely on that teen and preteen experience. But I think you could make the argument that those figures are broadly applicable across the rest of the economy as well. You get social media and you're fed, as you say, Adam, algorithmized, incentivized hate that gets pushed out through your mobile phone and is accessed at 5G rates of speed anywhere you are at any time of day, constantly throughout your day. You're getting pings about how everything is terrible. You're getting News Corps steering the dialogue and steering people's thoughts and feelings and creating rage bait. Even if they're not a profitable entity, they're still a very influential one in terms of how they steer the Australian discourse. And so what you have is people who are really discontented, really unhappy, even if the underlying economic circumstances wouldn't necessarily. We're not going through a depression. We're not even technically in a recession. And yet people are as unhappy as they've ever been with the state of things. And I think that's got to be part of it, right?
That's part of it. I think the other thing, look, this is getting real deep into the rabbit hole, and I won't expound on it too much, is that I think generationally, millennials and the younger generation, we were, again, raised on this concept, and as you said it before, that everything is going to get better, and we were told.
My mother-in-law said that to me recently.
You can do whatever you want.
Of course, you can send your kids to private school, and I was like,
you can
we
have
can't.
This, you can have what you want.
Here are the numbers. We physically cannot send our kids to private school,
and
we
so
cannot afford it. She's like, things will just get better, and I was like, yeah, that's not a mentality that millennials have. Boomers have that. Millennials don't have that mentality.
There's a generational. I guess there's a rift between the reality of what is possible and the reality on the ground. And perhaps we'll
you look at where all the spending is coming from. It's coming from the boomers who have paid off houses, who are still getting all these generous tax concessions, who are getting, who had everything more or less handed to them on a plate, and things just got better and better and better. And they're doing all the spending. And they raise interest rates because inflation's too high, and who pays for it? The millennials have got $1 million mortgage and are struggling to keep their heads above water. And, it doesn't slow the boomers spending down because they don't have loans on their houses anymore. So they don't give a fuck. It doesn't stop them.
I just think that there's a disconnect between, like, reality is always less than the dream that you're sold. So I don't know. I think there is some sort of element of that as well, potentially, which, I'm sure psychologists have got some sort of theory on. But don't worry, the federal government has now passed their capital gains tax changes through the Senate with the Greens' support. So they did make one small tweak to the legislation before it went through.
Everything's better. We solved it. We're all good now.
Has anyone checked on Dave Hughes? Has his heart exploded?
Oh, no, the government sucks. They're all shit-ends. Oh, no, I'm going to lose my big tax concessions because I'm an Aussie battler. Oh, no, they're all stupid. Fuck off, Dave.
Dave Thornton's been doing some good impersonations on
his Hughesy impersonation is scarily good. It's
so
scarily good.
I mean, he's worked with him, I think, for a bit, so he's quite familiar with him. But the Australian media landscape's collapsing. Carl got yeeted out of Channel 9. Hughesy's doing... It's, what is going on?
Carl's been building up his own independent, sort of far-right little media ecosystem in the background. I remember a sunburnt country where everything was chill and filled with white people. And it's like, Carl, I don't know if this is really the flex that you seem to think it is, buddy.
I have seen that he is being referred to as Joe Bogan. which I think is champagne comedy. That
And
is
just all of these people that are
excellent.
fucking millionaires complaining about the way things are when they've never had it so good is infuriating to me.
And how
100%.
they can't say anything anymore, and they're the silent majority while they speak on their national radio show.
Can't say anything anymore to my 900,000 followers. Oh no.
Oh,
The
no.
government's gagging me. I
No.
wish they would fucking gag you, Dave. Shut up, you annoying prick.
They need content for morning television. It's a desperate landscape out there.
They really do.
Anyway, so yeah, the change they made basically was that they would end an exemption that allowed self-managed super funds to borrow money to invest in residential property as part of the agreement. So so previously you could have residential super fund. We still can. Residential super funds can buy property as investments. That's fine. That can be something that's part of your asset class through a self-managed super fund. However, the self-managed super fund cannot borrow money now for those investments, which is something that only changed. It wasn't actually that long ago. It was several years to a decade
It was
ago.
2011 or 2012 or something
Yeah.
that changed. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I mean, I've always been against self-managed super funds. For those who don't know, if you are a high net worth individual looking to shelter some tax, boy, have I got a vehicle for you, self-managed super fund. That's essentially a way that rather than having your money in a fund like Host Plus or Australian Super or one of those sorts of funds, you can basically direct the investments yourself. And obviously you need to do your own audits and do your own sort of compliance and all that sort of stuff around it. But what it essentially exists to provide is a tax shelter for high net worth individuals to protect themselves from accumulating tax.
yeah.
So I don't know. I personally think the whole fucking SMS industry can fucking go away. I think the whole purpose of it is a rort. So
It is, and look, the number of self-managed super funds has grown in Australia as well. But I mean, the other thing is, it is a big risk for someone who runs one. Like, if you think you're going to get rich quick using one, and you make some bad decisions, you can literally nuke your entire retirement. So, it is it can be cut both ways if you don't know what you're doing. But the main point here politically is that, that was the concession the Greens got out of the government. It will cost, in exchange for, this is the key part, further deliberation and a delay until August 14 for some of the changes for the national that they've flagged for the National Disability Insurance Scheme.
and an
take place.
inquiry into the
An inquiry.
NDIS and what that's going to look like if the proposed Labor cuts actually take effect, which I think is good. I mean, it'd be great if the Greens could have protected more of the NDIS rather than just giving it more runway in perpetuity. But I think an inquiry is going to, I think Labor thinks like, the inquiry will be fine for us, and the inquiry will be bad for Labor, and they'll have to protect the NDIS because it's going to be a fucking schmozzle.
I mean, Jordan Steele John, he's a Greens a politician who
he's a
is
disabled member of Parliament.
I feel like this is his
very
moment.
Forward facing on these issues.
He's been very vocal about it, and I feel like he's going to be a sort of core part of the coming debate, and I think there will be a fairly public debate about this. Sometimes these sort of inquiries, just sort of go into the Senate, you never hear about them, but like I feel like this is going to be fairly public, and actually will probably drag the government through the coals, so to speak. So,
and just
we'll
to twin Rhoda's point in the chat, it's not SMSFs are not a vehicle for wealth creation. They're a vehicle for tax sheltering. For wealth preservation. They're expensive to run compared to just having your money in a industry super fund, right? So the whole point of the investment vehicle is to protect high net worth individuals from paying their fair share of tax, as far as I'm concerned.
So as well as the other changes we spoke about the other week, that's, I think, the capital gains tax and superannuation, not superannuation, the
Negative gearing.
Negative gearing, thank you. I'm getting tired now. Changes have now sort of gone through, so they'll become law. Now, it does mean that all these changes that they've made will cost the budget, and the delays to the NDIS changes will cost the budget several $100 million. But I reckon they would have pre-gamed this out, and they sort of were prepared for this. I think
they knew that they'd go for first and take second, right?
Yeah. And finally, we're coming up to time, but the end, probably related to the superannuation discussion, some good news here in Australia. And these are changes that the government passed a year or two ago, I think.
Well,
s-
good news
yeah.
depending who you are.
Well,
according to this, yeah.
I think it's unilaterally good. I don't,
Yeah.
I don't know why we're even asking the business sector.
Yeah,
to be honest.
ABC, sort of asking a bunch of small business owners whether they like a thing that's going to have them pay money sooner rather than later is not the shocking revelation that you might think. Now let's ask a local cafe owner what he thinks of the government. Yeah, the bloody government, they're not bloody good. It's all bloody crooks in the bloody government. Thanks, Stavros. See you next week.
So, as of next month, businesses will have to pay your super at the same time they pay you your wage.
Yeah, as it always should have been.
Should have been. So previously, they could pay up to quarterly. And as someone who works for a business that pays quarterly, it is sometimes fairly inconsistent as to when they pay you within that quarter, which therefore changes the amount coming in. But it also kind of stooges you because the concept here is that superannuation is an investment tool, right? So the more you invest, if you want to use it very simply, it's an interest. It's a compound interest sort of situation.
Kind of like buying stocks. You're buying them at the time.
Well, you are
of
buying
what
stocks.
Yeah. It's you're buying them at the time of what they're worth at the time, and then they fluctuate in value with the markets. And things like that. So
there's a concept called dollar cost averaging, which basically means if you buy $1,000 worth of stock weekly, right, rather than $365,000 worth of stock yearly in one go, you end up with a better result because you're averaging out the highs and lows and the dips of the market, as opposed to if you buy all of that amount at one time, then you're subject to the vagaries of the market. Is the market up? Is the market down? So it is better for consumers. It also means you have much less chance of wage theft in a case where a company goes under or is stooging their employees.
Yep. And someone who's had that happen to them personally, I've lost shitloads of super because the company was paying quarterly and then they went under. And then that was it.
Fuck yourself.
And I've known people who have sort of not realized, because I guess you're not checking your super contributions as frequently as you're checking, just being paid your weekly, monthly, whatever wage, that you just sort of realize, wait a minute, hey, has my super been going in? And realizing that the business just hasn't been paying it when they should have been.
Yeah.
$16
billion
has to be in line.
Is it 16 billion? Let me have a look. What's the number per year? Or is it 6 billion? It might be.
Of what wage theft?
Or people just miss out on super per year. Let me find the number. Keep talking.
So the idea is now it's going to be paid when you get paid out for your paycheck, and so you've got visibility on it. You just go, okay, well, there's my whatever it is. There's my $600, and it goes in every couple of weeks, and you can see it alongside your paycheck, and you know it's being paid. So I don't know. I think it's
is the number.
6.2 billion.
6.2 billion goes unpaid in superannuation each year.
Yeah.
Can you imagine, not the other thing is when people invest in super, that goes back into the businesses that are being invested. Yeah, sure. You could say, well, maybe small businesses don't have that money for their cash flow, and it cuts both ways.
But it's the same amount of money that's being paid. You're just paying it sooner. So I would argue it's better for your cash flow, right? Yes, you need to pay it whatever it is fortnightly as opposed to at the end of the quarter. But now you as a small business owner don't need to come up with 90 grand at the end of the quarter that you need to pay your super. It's interspersed throughout the year. So
it makes it more evenly,
If you pay your insurance monthly, if it's the same amount of dollars as if you pay it yearly, you have less of a cash crunch when it comes to the end of the year and you need to pay your insurance because you've been paying it steadily throughout the year. So I would argue it's better for cash flow as well. And the people that are having a sook about it are the ones that
don't have good cash flow.
Don't have good cash flow, in which case should you be running a business if you can't physically meet the demands of your obligations to your employees?
Yeah. Do you have a good business? That's the question. So I think this is a great thing, and when it came out, when it was passed a couple of years ago, and they've sort of given it time for businesses to take to sort of.
A lot of organisations have already adopted it.
Apparently, there's 15% or something. So there's 400,000 companies across the country. They reckon about 15% are still unaware that they have to do this, which is not a small number in reality.
No.
So
I don't
we'll
know.
see.
I've been
what
seeing it
happens.
around. I'm not a business owner, and I know what's happening. So
Yeah,
I thought the changes.
George,
had already come
you're
into
not
effect.
a benchmark for.
No, I know. I'm not a normie in this regard. I know.
Yeah, how aware of economic policy in Australia.
Yeah.
Anyway, so check your. So yeah, come July, check your payslip and make sure that
That it's
and
actually
check
gone in.
And actually check, because sometimes it'll be on your payslip, but it won't go into the super
Yeah,
account. So
on my
make sure
pay
it's
slip, it'll say like how much
Yeah.
super has like was paid out this week, but that doesn't mean it's gone into your super then. Like it's just how much
Yeah, you got to
they're
check
going.
out.
Yeah, you gotta
download
actually
the
check
app,
it.
log into the portal. Yeah, check that it's gone in.
Actually
And if
check
it
it.
hasn't gone in, make some noise.
Speaking of making noise, we have been, we are, and we always will be Unnatural Selection. Make sure you visit us at our salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com. And make sure you follow us on all the bullshit social medias that have, do, or ever will exist at our handle at Unnatural Show. That's Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and Motherflippin' TikTok. Make sure you follow me on Instagram and TikTok at Jorge Tsipos.
You can follow me on Threads at tom.heath.
You can follow me down to my superannuation fund head office, where I'll be making sure that just watching that sweet super just drop into my account.
Yeah, just there on the door.
Yeah.
Sorry, hi guys, it's me. It's Adam again. Oh, fuck.
It's not
Here we go.
again.
Yes, we got it. Yeah, it's fine. Fuck off.
Okay. To the cent. Anyway. Yeah.
Thanks for listening, guys. Love your faces. We'll see you next week.